So close. Hey, hey. Welcome back, guys. Today I'm going to show you how I turned a sheet of craft foam like this into a Fallout 4 baseball grenade, just like this one. If you guys like these kinds of videos, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Let's get to it. To start off here, we're going to have to replicate the shape of the baseball. So, luckily for us, baseballs are fairly simple. They're made up of two hourglass-shaped pieces of leather, or at least they're hourglass shape when you lay them out. So, we're going to make a template of that. To do that, we're going to take some masking tape. We're going to cover the baseball, at least one of those hourglass shapes, get it down nice and tight. So we'll get our masking tape on there. Making sure to press it down, make sure there's no bubbles or any funky shapes poking out. With that done, we can take a pen and carefully trace around in between all of the stitching. That's going to give us a nice outline of the patch, or the piece of leather itself that we're going to be replicating. Now we're going to have to carefully peel off our tape for our template. Be careful, it is going to be kind of, the tape itself is going to be curved just due to the shape of the baseball, so it's going to not want to come off nice and easily. Now we're going to fight with it a little bit here and get it to lay down flat on a cutting board as best we can. You're not going to be able to get it perfectly, again, because of the shape, and masking tape isn't super flexible. So we're going to get it as flat as we can without distorting the shape too much, and then we're going to take a razor blade, fresh razor blade, and cut it out. Now we have our template, so we're going to trace that onto some foam. Again, I'm just using a ballpoint pen here. I find they work really well. Don't need anything fancy. With the template traced onto the foam, now we're going to go around with a razor blade and cut at roughly a 45-degree angle to keep a nice bevel going all the way around, making our lives easier when we go to glue everything together. Perfect, so now we have one of our quote-unquote leather pieces cut out. So we're going to flip that over, trace it onto the foam as well. And you're going to see here, what I do is I'm going to trace it once, and then I'm going to flip it 180 degrees, and I'm going to trace it again. That's because I'm not sure if my first one was perfect. This way, by doing that, I'll see if there's any discrepancies in the shape, and then I can make any adjustments going off of that. I ended up just cutting it out fine, don't have to redo the first piece because it was very close. If there had been any significant differences, I would have recut my first piece as well. And there we go. Next up, we have to make those foam pieces round. And to do that, we're going to use a heat gun. We're going to heat both sides of the foam, get it nice and warm, not too hot though, you don't want to melt the foam or burn your fingers. And we're going to slowly work it with our fingers to make it round like the original baseball shape. So we're going to focus on the two end parts of that hourglass shape. and try to get them nice and round because the middle section isn't as crucial. It'll sort of bend when we glue. And don't get discouraged if it doesn't stick at first. You're gonna have to do this probably 3 or 4 times. I think I ended up shaping each piece 4 times with the heat gun just to get that shape and stick it. Or stick the shape, keep the shape. Words. Alright, so now that we have our 2 shapes rounded out, we're going to start gluing them together. So I'm using my hot glue gun here. I'm only gluing off the start here, just sort of a little tack. It's about 1/2 inch long, just trying to get everything lined up nicely. And I'm going to slowly work my way around, doing roughly 1 inch at a time. I'm not going too crazy, just taking it easy. That lets you get everything in place, because it's tough to hold complicated shapes like this in place while you're gluing them. It's not like gluing just a straight edge. You're going to have to sort of keep the form of the baseball with your hands as you go. And be careful, because the heat can distort your rounded shape as well, so that's why you kind of need both hands to do this, only doing a little bit at a time just to keep everything in shape. And there we go, we have a baseball. So next up we're going to do our stitching. In this case I wanted to keep it simple, not do real stitching. That would have worked but would have taken a long time. So all I'm going to do is take a razor blade, go all the way around, and just notch out where my stitches are. Later when I hit these with the heat gun, those little cuts are going to separate, and they're just going to give us a little bit of definition there. Better than just painting them on and doing nothing else. So now we're going to take our heat gun there, like I mentioned, to get those to separate, and then we're also going to give the foam a little bit more texture to make it look more leathery and used. So what I'm going to do is take a piece of crumpled up tin foil, and I'm going to press that into the hot foam. Be careful here too, if you get it too hot, you're going to melt your glue, which isn't ideal. So I noticed my stitches needed a little bit more help, so I went around one more time with the razor blade just to make everything a little more defined. Alright, so for the mechanism here, we're just going to cut out a couple pieces of foam for the round bits. I ended up just taking a little piece of pipe I kicking around just to sort of give myself an outline to follow. And there's one. And our bottom one. So we're going to want this one to sit flush, as you can see, because it isn't rounded underneath. It's going to stick up a little bit around the edges. So we're going to take our razor blade and we're going to very carefully cut a bevel into the bottom of this piece. So just going to go around really slowly at like maybe a 5 or 10 degree angle. Just taking my time, working through slowly. Watch your fingers if you're doing this. And there we go. Nice little bevel. And lastly, for the mechanism, just need a little vertical piece to go between those two first cylinders that I cut. And here I like to take a pen again and just mark off where I'm going to be gluing on. That just keeps me from having to do any adjustments while I have glue on the part that I'm gluing. Just gives me a nice layer, a nice reference to line up on and just smack it in. Just like that. And that concludes our foam work. Let's do some paint. So in this case I'm going to use all hand paint, just acrylic paints from Michaels, nothing fancy. Just wanted to keep this one on the cheap for the sake of this video. So we're just going to give it a nice base coat of white.
First base coat.
For our second coat, we're going to give it a little bit of color just to get us a little closer to the final color we want. So we're just going to add a little bit of tan in there, mix it up. And add a little bit more tan, mix that in too. You don't need a lot of color to make a white into an off-white, so just add a little bit at a time, then you're not going to have to add a ton of white to counter that if you go a little too far. That'll get our second coat on there. Beautiful. And now we're going to do our stitches. So I got a nice red here that matches really closely. And I'm going to take a piece of foam and cut my own little brush or dabber for this. Just made it the right size to match the size of the stitches, and I'm just going to slowly go around and just dab some paint onto each one of my cuts. If you have a look at my cuts here, you can see they're all slightly offset on either side of the stitch, which is how they are on a baseball as well. Isn't that pretty? And now I'm just going to mix up some black and some white and a little bit of metallic silver for the mechanism on top. And now we have a really pretty baseball. Let's make it dirty. So I'm just going to take some brown on a paper towel and just sort of rub it in. In some cases, people use a watered down paint to do weathering like this. That is a good idea, but in this case, because I'm using just water-based paints and I was doing everything very quickly, like I didn't have a ton of drying time between coats, if you do use water with it, you're going to end up wiping out the bottom layer. So either make sure your bottom layer is really dry, or just make sure to be really gentle with it. So now I have a key ring, just going to dirty it up a little bit. I believe these are nickel plated or stainless, so they're not going to really take any paint, but we can get a little dirt on there, make it a little less pretty. And a piece of mechanics wire, we'll cut that out, wrap it around with some needle nose pliers, and that gives us our pin. Slide that right through. And now we have a baseball grenade. We'll shed a little bit more weathering in there, and we are done. As promised, guys, I'm going to do a little breakdown on the costs for everything. So, first off, we have our key rings. That package of 5 key rings cost me $2.69. Divide that by 5, we get 54 cents for a 1 key ring. Next up, our craft foam. So, a sheet of craft foam like this costs $1.50 at Michael's. If you factor in I use roughly 1/3 of that sheet, that's 50 cents. And paint. So, these bottles of paint range from $1.20 to $3.79. I'd say I'm being pretty generous to say I even used half one of these, but we're gonna give it the benefit of the doubt. We'll say I used 75 cents worth of paint. And next up we have our razor blades. It costs $12.98 for a pack of 100 of these. I only used 3 of them, so that comes to 39 cents for razor blades. Then we have our hot glue. A pack of 6 of these costs $6.98. I use a quarter of one, that's 25 cents. Sorry, 29 cents. And then we have our masking tape and mechanics wire. The amount I used of either of these is pretty negligible. We'll give it the benefit of the doubt, say I used 20 cents. And that brings us to a total of $2.67 for our baseball grenade. If I had to buy all these separately, it would have been about $36.15. Alright, and on to tools. So first up, we have our hot glue gun. So this particular model you can buy for about $24 online. You don't need anything quite like this, but it is handy to have a bigger one. Similar. Alright, and our heat gun. Full price for one of these guys from Princess Auto is $35. I think I paid $12 for it on sale. We have our cutting mat, of course, and that was $10 at Princess Auto. And then lastly, I used my pair of pliers. These were about $30 for this pair of needle nose pliers. You don't need a $30 pair of pliers to do anything like this, but I threw it on there. So that comes to a total of $99 worth of tools. If you bought everything on sale and didn't splurge on anything, you could probably get all that stuff for like 20 or 30 bucks. Thank you so much for joining me again today, guys. I had a ton of fun building this Fallout 4 baseball grenade. If you guys have any similar projects you'd like to see me build, throw a comment down below and I'll see if I can do it for you. Thanks again for joining me. We'll see you next time.